all this week we were kind of like, will he, won't he, Djokovic, play the tour finals? And finally, at the 11th hour, we have an answer.
We do have an answer. Unsurprisingly, I have to say, he's not playing. He did leave it to the very
You
last
you were
moment.
like Mystic Meg because you knew this. You were sensing this like way before way earlier than I think a lot of people were thinking about.
I mean, definitely earlier than the ATP would like to acknowledge that they wanted to change the
Mm.
graphics. I think I couldn't understand why he would play it. I mean, he couldn't have been more clear previously. The fact that the things that are important to him, slams, playing for his country, he's at home, he wants to be fresh. He is not fresh playing a week in Athens and some long matches on quite a slow indoor court. I just couldn't understand what reason he would have to play it. But I did understand the reasons why he might not want to disclose it to the ATP and tennis fans at large this early. So I loved the drama of it, Joel. I'm actually buzzing from the excitement of the fact that all of the tennis media had to say, and Musetti hasn't qualified. And then obviously, like, we're all like, well, he might have actually. And Joel, he informed, Djokovic informed Musetti on the court.
Yeah.
I think he said something like, good luck in Turin. And Musetti was like, really? And he was like, yeah. So
I sort
wild
of,
scenes.
just my kind of immediate reaction, kind of watching the end of that final when they were at the net. Musetti didn't look like a man who had just lost to Djokovic after a great fabulous final, 2.5 hours. There was a smile on his face,
He was
and
buzzing, wasn't he? Yeah.
he was laughing, and I was kind of thinking, oh, what has Djokovic said there? And I'm not a lip reader, but I did sense that maybe he said to him, "You're going to Turin, mate, because I'm done for the season."
Yeah, he's like, I don't want to get on another flight. I'm in Athens.
Mm.
I live here. Things are good. I mean, it was a bit controversial, though, Joel, how late it was left. I think a lot of people have been split on this. The fact that he
Mm.
did leave it so late, and the fact that, Musetti's preparation, if he was always planning on withdrawing, has not been ideal. So I've got a couple of questions that we should unpack. My first question, to really put you on the spot, was Djokovic ever going to play it? I think you know how I feel about this. I think he was never going to play it, but he has put out a statement, and that does make it seem like this was a spur of the not a spur of the moment decision, but it was related to injury. Do you believe it?
Well, this is what is clouding my judgment because Djokovic has come out this evening on Instagram stories and has said, I was really looking forward to competing in Turin and giving my best. But after today's final in Athens, I'm sad to share that I need to withdraw due to an ongoing injury. I'm truly sorry to the fans who were hoping to see me play. Your support means so much. I wish all the players an amazing tournament, and I can't wait to be back on the court with you all soon. So I'm not going to lie. I still think he was going to play it. I just think that, you know, if you depending on how Athens was going to go, I think if he was fit and if he was fresh and he felt like he was playing good tennis, I just don't see why he would have just. I know it was like his family's tournament, and I totally understand coming back, and that's just for a special occasion, a special moment. But I feel like there was an opportunity maybe to kind of continue the momentum on, and maybe it's the fan in me that thinks, I don't know how many times we're going to see Novak Djokovic on a tennis court, and we, should cherish all these moments that we kind of still, get for him, particularly in big moments, whether that's finals or in the, in the end of season finals as well. So maybe there was a part of me that was thinking, hopefully he would play, but
Joel, if he had a good run in Athens, there was no way. I mean, that's 1 day preparation. It was, I mean,
but he's been off. He's not played a lot of tennis recently.
well, I think it's to do with the fitness side of things. I don't think
Mm.
that he had 2 weeks of tennis, consecutive tennis, especially against some of the world's best in a row in the tank at this point of the season. I think it wouldn't necessarily have made sense for him when he could actually spend time with his family, rest and recuperate, and get ready to be as fresh as he can for Australia, and hopefully for another season where he can put himself, into the semi-finals, into contention at majors. So I don't think he was ever going to play, and I do think it's probably the wording required,
Yeah.
in terms of the
I mean,
fans and
this
the
is the only
ATP.
response he can really this is the only response really he can
You
give.
can't be like, lol, sorry, I was
Yeah,
never going to play. Obviously not.
exactly. I mean, there are people who are kind of disappointed, I guess, with Djokovic and with how late he has left it. I mean, there is some chat on kind of it being a statement, as it were, to the ATP, being a bit of a kind of, well, the schedule is so out of hand, it's so crazy. You're just kind of treating players with less and less less and less respect nowadays.
Mm.
And, in that case, I'm gonna just sort of make a bit of a statement of when I'm gonna kind of reveal. Do you kind of read anything into that?
I mean, I really do. He's said to other players like Alcaraz, you've got to put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to complain about the schedule, you've got to take action. And I actually think this is kind of like a bit of passive resistance where he is able to actually stick it to the ATP because it was an absolute mockery, the schedule going into this.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's a bit unprecedented in the sense that you rarely have a player who's already qualified choosing to play the week before the ATP finals, but it's perfectly possible. And in this case, it's his family's tournament. So he wanted to play it, but it makes it almost impossible for him to play the ATP finals with any real preparation because you would be playing or you could be playing on Sunday whilst playing a final in a different country, I mean, on the Saturday. So they had the draw, they had the photographs, they had everything. The ceremony was all done in Turin without two of the players there. And what makes it even more ridiculous is that one of them actually was there but didn't know he was playing yet. So Felix is in Turin, but not in a single picture. And he has actually qualified by right, not because of a withdrawal. So I think this is like turning the screw on the ATP of saying, you've not listened to the PTPA, you've not listened to anything that's been said or the players, you've made these long masters. And because of these long masters, you've actually stretched the season to the point where your top players are unable to prepare adequately for your biggest event of the year. So, I mean, I'm clearly quite passionate about this because but I kind of feel like it's the perfect crime
Yeah.
because there's nothing that's going to stick on Novak
Yeah.
Djokovic from this because he's allowed to play that week. He's also allowed to pull out for the injury, but he's also made the ATP look really silly. And when you compare the WTA and the ATP, I think this is a rare moment where, I mean, even
I was thinking the
yeah,
exact same thing, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, it's a rare moment where the ATP looks, I mean, ridiculous when it comes to the fact that they're saying, we're ready, are you? And you're like, well, actually, you haven't got any players. You've got like three-quarters of the players are in Turin.
I mean, do you feel like this is the nail in the coffin in terms of right, the schedule build up to the tour finals? It needs to end at the Paris Masters. There needs to be a little bit of a break, and then the tour finals begin. We can't have these 250 kind of tournaments, for players who feel like they want to, get some points at the very final second. They can't exist because it just creates too much havoc.
Completely agree. And that's why the ATP have actually changed the rule for next year. It does end in Paris. I think there are lots of things at work that make this particularly unprecedented. Novak Djokovic does have free will and is perfectly willing to do what he wants and to play when he wants and to take the consequences. So I don't think this situation would necessarily repeat itself, but there's no reason why people should be scrambling for 250 points when you want to have the best show in Turin. You don't want people withdrawing. You want everyone to be fit. And it looks like, Felix made the right decision, banking on Djokovic pulling out and Musetti not winning the title. Both of those things happened, which means that he had a week to prepare after his Paris run. It makes perfect sense. I mean, I do think it's unfortunate, as I've said, I do think it's unfortunate for Musetti. I think it's also not unfortunate for him because if Djokovic hadn't pulled out, he wouldn't be there. But he is sort of caught in the crossfire a little bit when it comes to, qualification and what this does look like. But having said that, I mean, it's quite fun watching it all go down in a day, Joel, and watching it in real time.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I think from Musetti's point of view, because we'll come on to looking at the groups and previewing the finals proper in the second half. But the fact that Djokovic has withdrawn and Musetti gets his place, of a player who is higher up in the rankings, it's almost kind of like maybe it's actually a little bit of a bittersweet moment because in theory, Musetti may have got a kind of a more favourable draw than, say, if he kind of came in at the very bottom.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's also something that's quite interesting. I was going to say one reason why I also think that maybe Djokovic did stay hush as well, because it really felt like Musetti had no idea this was on the cards, really, by a sort of surprise at the net. But it could have been because it is Djokovic's family tournament. And if Djokovic had said he wasn't playing the ATP Finals, Musetti would have pulled out of the tournament. And so you want the first edition of the tournament Athens for such a long period of time to have top talent, and it made for an incredible final. A lot was on the line. All eyes were on Athens and Novak Djokovic and Musetti and who's going to qualify. So it is very smart not to say anything to anybody. So I do think that Musetti was in the dark, but I don't think it's the worst way to lose a final when you actually go to make the ATP Finals as a result of losing the final.
I mean, just before we go on to look at the matches in Athens, what would you have done personally if you're in Novak Djokovic's shoes? Would you have left it to the very last moment, or would you have done the, I don't know, in some people's regards, the more honest thing and pull out with much more time to spare, so everyone can get their things organised, ATP players playing, etc., etc.
To be honest, I love what he's done. I think it's so iconic. I think he's really made his point.
But would you have done it?
I mean, if I was the greatest of all time in Novak Djokovic's situation...
Do you feel like he's afforded the kind of the ability to do this just because he's Novak Djokovic?
I think so. I also think he's making a point. And I think he's making multiple points here that are valuable points. And I think it's a very interesting situation where players are not having to stick to these rules that they're all complaining about, and the injuries and the schedule. And I think it's players taking back the power. And I think it's actually not a selfish act. I think it's actually something that highlights the need for change. And the fact that it ends in Paris next year is positive. On a personal side of things, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, hopefully I'd have already qualified for the ATP Finals, Joel, so I wouldn't need to, be in Metz or Athens trying to pick up a few points. What about you? You want to do the honest thing, but
I would probably have done that. I would have done that. I think
Kim
I would have done the
would have been honest,
thing.
wouldn't she? Kim would have been.
Yeah, I think so. The Rafa way would have been to kind of, I guess pull out before the draw, is made, because I think once things happen and then they get changed,
don't want to put anyone out, but
exactly. But as I said, I feel like the silver lining for Musetti is that he's taken Djokovic's kind of spot, higher up in the rankings in terms of those kind of group allocations, as opposed to kind of going in kind of right at the bottom. So
it's quite a tough group though when we get there. So
yeah, it is
there
quite
are no
tough group.
Easy matches at the ATP Finals.